The finite is always only a result. It's always only a product, a derivative. The finite is always a construct. So that's a powerful thesis. It means that the real construct is finitude, over and above any particular idea of social construction. It's the whole immanent plane of finitude, or finite plane of immanence, that is constructed through and through. So we're going to see that the only way out is to search for something that is not constructed and that is absolute in that sense. Badiou continues, as a result, I will also show in detail that the finite has two modes of existence. It can be the passive result of the operations of the infinite, and we shall call that déchet. I don't know how the English translators are going to translate that. A waste product, if we're using a countable noun, because it's un déchet. Otherwise, it might be more ordinary to translate it as waste or trash. Insofar as, so that's if the result is a passive result of the operations of the infinite. Insofar as it is the active product of the operations of the infinite, we shall call it a work. So a work in the sense that this word has in describing a work of art. The paradigm of the finite work, as opposed to the passivity of the waste product, is classically the work of art. So that's the paradigm case which justifies or suggests the use of the word. There's creation in it, and in the sense of active creation. But there is an effect, a work effect. So I'll finish the sentence. There is a work effect in every procedure of truth, in every truth procedure. So Badiou has 4 truth procedures: science, art, politics, and love. So the work of art, and so the full sense of the word work, can seem to be reserved for the truth procedure of art. But there is a work effect, something that it's not a work effect in an effect like a special effect and it's an illusion, a real effect of the same nature, so as the work of art, so a creative effect. And creating is not just producing or constructing, it's more than that. So there is a work effect in every truth procedure. As work of truth, you could say truth work, that's a little clumsy. So as a work of truth, the finite is the form, the created form, that takes on the action. No, it's the creative form that the action of this is bad. I'm going to leave it in because it just goes to show how difficult translation is. As work of truth, the finite is the created form taken by the action of one infinity on another. It is the spark which surges up from the localized rubbing of disparate infinities. So that's sort of both mathematical and poetical at the same time, but the idea is that somehow the work of art, or the work of truth, is doubly infinite. Not just getting one infinite doing its work on us and producing the different aspects of the finite quasi-autonomously. You're getting something more complex than that. This is the realm of the two, I suppose, in Badiou. You're getting two infinities coming together and interfering with each other and producing something that is new. And that sort of finite product that is at the same time finite and new is the opposite of the waste products or the trash that are fabricated under the ordinary functioning of capitalism. So you've got the work and you've got the waste or the trash. In order for it to be a work, there seem to be two conditions then. There's the condition of being conditioned by one, at least one truth procedure, and is this a subcondition within that condition, or is it a separate condition? Maybe we'll see later on. The second condition is that it's the product of two infinities encountering each other. Finally, I will propose an inversion of the romantic maxim. So for Badiou, his definition of Romanticism is receiving the infinite in the network, the finite network of love or of revolution or of art, and organizing thus on the model of the Christian incarnation, the descent of the idea into the sensible. So Romanticism for him is still functioning in the onto-theological paradigm, and it has this passivity, because you're just welcoming, receiving the infinite, and so it lacks complexity. Firstly, it lacks the complexity of the concept of several sizes of infinity, several different orders or powers of infinity. And secondly, it lacks the concept of combining two infinities to produce the work. There's only one type of infinity. Somehow it's one and a totality, and You just do your best to open yourself to it and to receive it. And there's no engineering of two infinities together. There's no, one could call it, as opposed to geoengineering and bioengineering, there's no Noah engineering in the radical sense, or noetic engineering, where you're splicing together or crisscrossing two infinities. So it's too simple, and it's too passive, it's too monistic, and it's too theological. My vision of truths is rather that they extort, I suppose, they extract violently in the singular trajectory of infinite operations. They extract an unknown finitude whose existence holds the place or takes the place of being. So that's another criticism of Romanticism. Romanticism, for all this idea of creativity, is stuck with the finite as it is. We saw that in the idea of the hypostases of the finite. So it lets the infinite stir things up, and there's some sort of creativity in that process. But in fact, Romanticism is an ideology that insufficiently describes the actual creative works of the Romantics. They're doing more than they think they're doing, and that's why there's not a passive receiving. There's an active extraction of an unknown finitude by way of a singular trajectory of infinite operations. That's why, according to Badiou, the essence of the finite resides in the infinite. So once again, you've got this idea that we see in Karl Popper when he says that science is not explaining the unknown by the known. That's reductionism, and so ultimately for Badiou, that would be a form of finitism and relativism. Popper says science, and we can now say the other truth procedures, works by explaining the known in terms of the unknown. And so the essence of what we know and experience and encounter on the plane of finitude is the infinite, and in fact the crossing of not the crossing of two infinities. That's the work, which is only one face of the finite. Anyhow, the essence, everything about the finite that is essential comes from the infinite. That's why Badiou agrees with Descartes, who says that the idea of the infinite is clearer than the idea of the finite. So when you explain something, you're clarifying it. And we have this these two directions that Popper points out. You can clarify things in terms of the known and the finite, and that's sort of a commensurable explaining and clarifying. There's no creative explanation involved. It's as if some things you just don't know, and you can clarify them with other things that you do know, and that way you can accumulate knowledge and experience, but you can't transform or create. And the other way of clarity is clarifying the known by the unknown, by a leap into something that is unknown up to now. And from that perspective, you can clarify the known and clarify the finite. So this is the methodological principle that is at work from the very beginning of this book. Badiou makes the leap into truths that we saw are eternal, universal, asubjective, and generic, and absolute. So with truths that are part of a process of creation, of the unknown, you can explain the known finitude in terms of the unknown finitude created by means of the truth procedures. Badiou says that his position is that beyond modern finitude and its radical critique, the real beginning. So we talked about the necessity of having a real beginning, and which is an incommensurable leap and not an ordinary commensurable beginning, which is just taking some particular starting point that is in phase with all the rest. So the real beginning lies in the following question: from what ontology of infinite being can it be sustained, or can be sustained, the crucial distinction between the finite as waste and the finite or waste product, and the finite as work? So he's putting the beginning in terms of the point he's just come to, and then he's going to reformulate that to show that this point found its clarification already in the beginning of the book, by means of what absolute, revoking any resort to the diverse forms of divine transcendence. From what absolute, then, does there arise the duty or the prescription to finish with, or to have done with, the relative? So, in fact, this absolute, this infinity, is already a work in our very desire or impulsion or drive or inspiration to find a way out of relativism. We're not just going to be in a world of relativism and then say to ourselves, this is hell, we need something else. That would be a sort of blind groping in the dark, at best. So in order to have even the very possibility of finding a way out of relativism, and so finding a way out of the world of waste products and into a world where real creation is possible, we need to have already, at least in a vague and nascent form, the idea of the absolute. And that's the question. How can we explicate this idea of the absolute? So it's in this point that the long march begins, where radical novelties, especially in mathematics and concerning the infinite, invite us to have done with the destiny of finitude, to become the subjects of some truths which extract the finite work effectively real, to extract the finite work from the effectively real network of intermingled infinites, and inscribe this work in the register of a form of eternity. So we need an idea of the absolute to begin, at least dimly perceived. But even a dimly perceived absolute is clearer in Badiou's sense, in explanatory value, than the more familiar ideas which seem clearer of the finite and the relative, and to give substance to this leap, or is both present as an idea and as a conjecture at the beginning. So to give substance to this conjecture, which is a counterintuitive leap at the same time, we're going to need mathematics, and we're going to need a long march through mathematics, especially the mathematics of infinity, in order to become the subjects of some truths. So he's giving at least a heuristic primacy to mathematics. That's the way Badiou did it. He did a long march through mathematics to give substance to his conjecture and to allow him to be the subject of some truths. And he seems to be proposing that as the method for getting at the clarity implicit in the idea of the absolute. That's very close to giving a primacy of mathematics as truth procedure over the other truth procedures. So in that case, it will be more than a heuristic primacy in the present age, or in the long march of some thinkers who are more in phase with, or more familiar with, or more gifted with mathematical understanding. That will be a useful heuristic for one group of people, and not impose itself on others. Other people, if it's just heuristic, would be able to get to the absolute by means of art, by means of love, or by means of politics. So if it's more, the long march through mathematics is more than the heuristic that is the most acceptable, or the most accessible to Badiou and to maybe to everybody today, because we're being mathematized to death by the hegemony of the algorithms. Maybe even if we don't like mathematics and don't think about mathematics, maybe we're being pre-oriented towards mathematical concepts. I don't know. That would be an argument to make if I wanted to. I think this is a dangerous point. Is it heuristic or is it apodictic? Is it one mode of access and others are equally possible? Or is it the mode of access, even if we relativize it to our particular age or Western countries, or if we universalize it, if it's a method that works by universal imposition that is going towards a mathematical reductionism. And so we see that in Badiousians. We see some Badiousians who have mastered lots of mathematics, and so they think that they have some special access to philosophy as well. That sort of legitimates that they go over and beyond their mathematical competence, and have, by the nature of that competence, more legitimacy in the philosophical sphere than somebody that is not interested in mathematics or finds it difficult or just hasn't gotten round to it. So I think at the epistemological level, we have to be wary of how this idea of the long march through mathematics is put into practice, and the conclusions that are drawn. And I think it's in danger of violating Badiou's principle of equality, which is the basis for his communism. If the mathematicians, or since they're going outside mathematics into philosophy, if the mathematical reductionists or the mathematicists have primacy over the artists, the scientists, and the lovers, well, the other scientists, the artists, the lovers, and the political militants, I think that will be not very satisfying and not enough to counter the fake infinities that are on the market within capitalism. So the trajectory of this book goes from the critique of finitude, finitude being the central ideological fetish of our time. So we're going from the critique of finitude to the examination of the concrete emergence of certain infinities in the truth procedures which human thought has shown itself to be capable of. And so from finitude to the emergence of infinities by way of a speculative theory that is also as complete as possible concerning the kingdom of the infinites, as contemporary mathematics gives us the keys to. So he's reiterating that we're going, that's the big idea, going from finitude and a critique of finitude to the infinite, the infinites, and to the absolute. And the path or the trajectory or the means or the method is a passage through the mathematics, contemporary mathematics of infinity. So that's a description of the book. We're invited to follow this path. Does it rule out other paths? I don't know. Is it a valuable path? Well, here I think it is. And if we make the comparison with Laruelle in A Biography of Ordinary Man, we see a crucial difference. Laruelle claims that his thought is under the condition of science, but it's a transcendental science that is in fact his thought. So his thought is conditioned by his thought, with thought reconceived as a science. So there's something up in the air about that. It's not exactly a vicious circle, but it's using the word science as almost an indeterminate counter, in both senses of the word counter, in relation to the step outside of the determined world of anthropological predicates and into the real of the absolute. Badiou has more than one truth procedure, not just science as in Laruelle in this book, as four, and his idea, Badiou's idea of science, has real, independent content. Maybe we can say, well, there's something funny about taking mathematics and not quantum theory or string theory or molecular biology or whatever. Maybe we can say that there's a closing off of the choice that is not fully explicated or justified, but nonetheless there is a real and independent of Badiou's own thought, autonomous content to the idea of science, and it's on the basis of this autonomous content that Badiou can move thought by way of poetizing, that is, creating philosophical concepts that are generated by this long march through mathematics. And there we could say there's a question of testability. Laruelle propounds a thought on the condition of science, and it's true, there is a great amount of conceptual creation in A Biography of Ordinary Man, but there's this sort of floating quality to it. And here's the test for Badiou. He does goes through the long march through the mathematics of the infinite, and he creates concepts that we can see that people like thinkers like Laruelle and Deleuze are groping for intuitively, and they didn't quite get to. So maybe there are other domains where they got to other concepts that Badiou didn't get to, or not. That's a separate question. But here we can see that if we're looking for a test of the thought of Badiou, the test of contemporary conceptual creation effected via long march through mathematics, that test is a success for Badiou. And that's a pretty good justification of the whole procedure.